In this video, we'll take an in-depth look at the different kinds of iOS and Android featurings that exist. We'll outline some tips to increase your chances of getting your app featured and explain how you can measure the impact of being featured on your app downloads. First, let's take a look at the different ways that apps and games can be featured on Google Play. When you open the Play Store, you first land in the Games tab, in the For You section, where you can find different clusters of featured apps. At the top, Google showcases personalized groups of apps and games that are closely related to your past browse and download behaviors. Google Play also features apps and games in collections based on similar themes. Here you can find app collections like Cook Delicious Food or Motivation and Self-Help, or game collections like cartoony games or stylized games. Next, if your app or game was released less than 30 days ago, or if you recently updated it by, for example, introducing a new level to unlock, your app will have a chance of being featured in the new and updated section. And besides thematic collections, Google also features apps and games grouped by category. Within each category, there are personalized recommendations and collections, such as animal games, management simulators, and collections grouping games with similar themes or features. Now let's move on to App Store featurings. When users open the App Store, the first section they land on is the Today tab. On this page, you'll find apps, games, or developers showcased in greater detail than on other tabs. Featured stories on the Today tab range from Game of the Day and App of the Day to exclusive premieres, new releases, or how-tos. All of these are curated by a special team of Apple editors. When you tap on and open a story card, you'll be able to discover a complete and engaging story shared by app developers themselves. Apple editors also curate apps and games that share a common theme, like games for your sweet tooth, or work out with a trainer at home. Like on Google Play, these thematic groupings encourage users to discover more apps and games. Stories or collections that were once featured on the Today tab can also appear in the search results for specific keywords, giving the stories more longevity. However, very recently, Apple reduced the size of these stories in the search results, also reducing their impact. Naturally, the Apps and Games tabs feature popular apps and games on the App Store. At the top of these pages, Apple highlights in-app events, trending apps, and popular apps. Throughout these sections, Apple also features collections displaying apps and games in lists, like popular games, this week's biggest updates, or multiplayer fun for everyone. Finally, keep in mind that Apple showcases many in-app events throughout its featuring pages. If you haven't yet experimented with in-app events, you could be missing out on a huge opportunity to increase your app's browse visibility. So what are the benefits of being featured? Well, being featured on the app stores can definitely increase your app's visibility and help your brand awareness efforts. It gives your app value both on the stores and in the eyes of users by testifying to its trustworthiness and quality. Featurings are also a great way to re-engage your current and lapsed customers. Let's have a look at an example. In May, Balance was featured on the App Store as the App of the Day in the United States. Because of this extra visibility, the app's downloads doubled on the same day. And thanks to this influx in downloads, the app went from ranking at number 96 in its category to number 36. Now let's get to the good stuff. What can you do to increase your chances of getting featured? Well, there are a variety of factors considered by both stores here, all of which come down to owning a great product that's loved by many users. First, Apple and Google favour apps that are unique and innovative. Apple particularly likes apps and games that regularly submit new updates and are quick to adopt new iOS features. Second, an app's design, overall quality, and user experience are a few primary factors that store editors keep in mind when selecting which apps to feature. Apple and Google lean towards apps that tell a great story and highlight the solution the app brings to the table alongside its features. Google Play will also specifically only consider games that comply with all policy practices and meet core quality guidelines. Next, because both stores only consider high-quality apps and games, they'll only consider featuring apps and games with plenty of positive ratings and reviews. So be careful not to only prioritize the opinions of store editors, but also those of your users. For the stores to even consider featuring your app, don't forget to make sure you have a well-optimized app page that follows ASO best practices. Regularly check that your app adheres to current metadata guidelines and design creatives that clearly highlight the app's core value. Our fifth tip to increase your chances of getting featured is to localize your app and App Store page. For your app to be featured outside of your main market, its app listing will have to be properly localized. We'll explain all about app localization later on in ASO with AppTweak. Finally, both Apple and Google have editorial teams that source and create stories to feature throughout the store. As a result, this final point is to nurture a good relationship with your App Store representative. And when you actually pitch your app to them, make sure to highlight a great story, the solution your app offers, and key performance metrics like user engagement and retention. So, let's say you follow our tips and guidelines to increase your chances of getting featured. What happens next? Well, Apple and Google don't necessarily inform developers as to when or where your app is going to be featured. Instead, you might see a sudden influx of downloads that come from browse or explore traffic without knowing exactly where in the store your app has been featured. Luckily, AppTweak can give you the answers you need. With our browse and explore features, you can easily identify where and when your app was featured and estimate the impact of these featurings on your app downloads. We're now in the browse section of AppTweak, where we'll show you how you can monitor App Store featurings. Let's start with the overview. Here, you can quickly determine how often your app was featured in comparison to your competitors. On the left, we show you the total number of featurings an app received over a certain time period. On the right, the time series allows you to view the evolution of daily featurings that each app received. Below, you can find a table of important metrics that will help you better understand the total number and growth of featurings over the date range selected. You can also use the filters at the top of this section to narrow your analysis down. For example, you can choose to only see featurings in the Today tab, or in the Apps or Games tabs. You can filter to see when your app or your competitors were featured in a specific collection. And if you want to go further than analysing the total number of featurings, you can also change the metric and monitor the estimated views or downloads that each story generated. Next, the All Stories page shows you more information for each individual featuring, including those unique to your app, those shared with competitors, and any of your missed featuring opportunities. For example, here we see that Snapchat and a competitor were both featured in the Today tab. This section will show you more details about the specific story or collection the apps were featured in. For each story, we'll show you the apps that were featured in it, how many estimated downloads and views the story generated, and for how many days the story ran. Let's take a deeper look. On the left, we can see the days this collection was featured on the App Store, and on the right, we see all the apps that were included in the story, their position, their app power, and the estimated downloads they received after appearing in this story. Further down, you can see all the keywords for which the featured story appeared during the time period, and we'll also show you their search volumes,
how long the story appeared for a given keyword, and the position in which the story ranked. And if you integrate your App Store Connect account with AppTweak, our impact section will provide you with an even more detailed estimation of the uplift in terms of downloads, page views, and impressions that your app gained after being featured in a story on the App Store Today tab.
Holding a spot in a store featuring can definitely give your app a significant boost in visibility and in downloads. It's like placing a product right in the store window, where more potential customers will see it, compared to it being hidden inside the store.